What's up, Greg?
What's happening, Greg?
Hey, how's everyone doing?
Hey, everybody. How y'all doing?
How's it going?
We're in here dancing behind with the music, but man, I never get tired of that intro. That intro is always just really good.
It is good.
Good job creating that. And as you guys can see, we have a special guest tonight. Jason from Bohemia Bees is on here. Bohemia Image Farm, he had put on there, but Greg had some business he had to take care of tonight. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you're just fine.
Greg has some business tonight he had to take care of, and will not be able to join the chat as far as we know. And so, but we'd already invited Jason on. He went from being our special guest to our special guest host, all just in the.
I was promoted all in one day.
I don't know.
Yeah,
either promoted or demoted. I'm not sure which, but we appreciate you being here. So welcome, Jason, and welcome everybody to the chat. Excited about it tonight. Once again, Brian, I really appreciate that intro. It's almost chill bump stuff, both the one that we do on our channels and also the one that Greg does. It's just some really good stuff. It's really good and creative and awesome. So anyway, we'll go ahead and get started. I guess, Brian, we'll start with you. Tell us what's going on in your neck of the woods.
Cold. It's cold. Just cold. Yeah. I'm in like that holding pattern. That's it, So I think the only last thing that I have to do is get the feeder situated on my Apame hives. That's it. But other than that, it's just sit in a holding pattern and almost, and I hate to say this, and Jason, you're kind of up and you get the weather also. So don't give me dirty looks because I'm going to say this, but I almost just wish that it would just get cold instead of like today it's 50 something and tomorrow it's going to be 30 and then the next day it's going to be 47 and
yeah.
So I agree.
Down here, we got down here it goes from 70 to 50 to 75 to 45 to today was 70 degrees. This morning we had some nasty thunderstorms roll through, and it was kind of funny. I work at the hospital, and I got there a little bit early this morning, right before the storm rolled through. It was kind of cloudy, but it didn't seem too bad. And then a few minutes later, folks started rolling in, and they had walked. They'd even just get into the bus where the shuttle picks them up, or just from the parking lot. They were drenched, soaked, covered in water. They had to take their shoes off and use blow dryers to try and dry them off. And so I barely got there before we had it. But then after that, it cleared up. And by the time I went home, came home a little bit early today. It was like 70 degrees and sunny, just a beautiful winter day out here. So.
Wow.
It was, well, I say that, but then again, when it comes to the bees, that's not always the best thing. Yeah. I'd like to welcome, we got a lot of familiar names in here, maybe some I don't recognize, but I go down the list. We got Stan in here. I see Ed in here, and I don't know everybody's names. We got Lee, we got Earl, Keith, just so many folks. I can't name everybody. Hope. Just a lot of folks already in here. 95 folks watching, and we're only, how long into this? Already 5 minutes, less than 6 minutes in. And awesome. Rodney Middleton's in here. Just some names I recognize. I'm not going to name everybody, but we appreciate everyone being in here. Just kind of a little bit of announcements here. We do have the December 21st anniversary stream team chat coming up, which is going to be a lot of fun. I mean, Brian's putting this thing together. It's going to be on his channel. Going to just be a lot of yes. It's easy to get confused doing that, Jason. It's hard to kind of go. But so there's going to be a lot of prizes. A lot of people have agreed to, we've got some prizes donated. We're going to be purchasing a few things here or there for discounted prices. So it should be a lot of fun. And we're still working on some things possibly. And so it's going to be a tremendous opportunity. So, all the super chats, anything that you've given in the past has helped go towards that. And I know I've tried to put everything pretty much back into the channel, and whether it be for prizes or for whatever, to try and improve my game a little bit and improve these chats. And so we appreciate any of that you guys can share. We'd appreciate any of that. But so I do want to go ahead, Jason. I talked to Brian, then I kind of cut you off there. What's going on in your neck of the woods down there?
No, it's cold. Like Brian said, I was going to echo him. I mean, it was 33 degrees, I think, the other day, and now it's windy out today or right now, and about 40. So it's cold, and
Crazy.
I would rather have, you said, like Brian said, I'd rather it just be cold. It just be solid cold for the rest of the winter and get through it. The bees, every time they seem to break cluster, they lose some volume. And it's just, to me, I'd rather have that solid strain of cold than have it up and down.
Mike Berry always talks about how I think he pretty much says it's just the colder winters the bees seem to do better for whatever reason. Of course, down here it's never just like bitter cold for extended periods of time where they just never come out of the hive for weeks on end. But there are some years that are colder than others. And so, and it does seem to be true. It just seems counterintuitive to me, or at least it did when I was a new beekeeper, that the winters when it was so cold, they did better. But it does make more sense to me now, because it seems like they don't burn through their stores as quickly. We do have a little pollen that comes in down here most of the year off and on, but as far as the actual nectar flower sources and blooming plants, it's just not anything impressive at all. And they can starve to death very quickly. Even if they have a good store, good stores going into winter. If you're not careful, you get a couple of weeks of 75-degree weather in late December, early January, and next thing you know, you're having to just emergency feed them. But down here, if you have too much honey on the colonies going in, then the hive beetles will just annihilate them. You got because they can't cover that space. Which, speaking of that, Jason, I was able to go back, and it's kind of interesting how just today, I was working on this yesterday. I actually contacted Jason. I went back, and Jason was our first, I guess, official guest on the stream team, if I'm not mistaken, right after Hive Life. It was like the second week that Jason came on, and I had not met you. I had not met you until Hive Life of last year. I saw a video of yours where you interviewed a bunch of people, or you had them, kind of like you did recently. You you had a video with a bunch of clips from different beekeepers, and that's the only thing I really knew about you. And then I met you at Hive Life and kind of hit it off. And so we had you on that night. I guess we actually when I went back and watched that video, I was trying to pull some stream team nuggets out to kind of share on my channel. At the beginning, we just decided right there, we're going to call ourselves a stream team. And that was the night that we kind of came up with we talked about it a little bit, but we kind of came up with the official idea that night. So Jason, you were a part of that history there with the stream team, and we appreciate having you here. And I went through that video. It was from last, probably late January, early February, somewhere around that time. And it's hard to believe it's been that long, but man, I went through that thing, and there were probably 4 or 5 clips, 4 or 5 segments in that thing I'm going to pull out and try and make nuggets out of over the next little while. So one of them dropped today. It was the first one. And it kind of, I think we'll kind of piggyback on that theme a little bit today. As we go along, I've got some topics I'd like to talk about as we go along, kind of get your thoughts on some things, both you and Brian, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun tonight. So
yeah, absolutely.
So be looking, I don't know what you guys think about this. Anyone in the comments as well, if you've had a chance to kind of look at my channel recently. I've been trying to go back and change a few things around, and just, I know that these stream team chats last about usually a couple of hours. And so I know that it's tough, if you're going back several months, to just say, hey, I want to watch a 2-hour video, even though, there's a lot of good information in some of these. So I went through, and I've been kind of trying to go through them and pull out segments of 10 to 20 minutes, is I think kind of an ideal time. Some will be a little shorter, some a little longer. Some really good discussions we had with our guests, the ones that were on my channel here. And I've got a playlist on the channel called Stream Team Nuggets. And I think I got 5 or 6 out now, and they're doing okay. And I hope it'll be some what they call evergreen content on YouTube, where people can see, like, for example, winterizing your bees or different topics. Maybe they can pop up, because we've had some, we've had Jason here, we've had Ian, we've had a lot of people. What do Ian have to say? Tomorrow's the start of double cracking egg. There you go.
Yeah, tomorrow, I don't understand. Tomorrow.
Jason didn't wait, huh?
What time zone are you in?
That's hilarious.
Like 5 minutes ago.
Double cracking egg. He gets those looks from Sandy if he tries to start the double cracking eggnog too early.
Anyway, but let's jump right in. I guess, I'd like to kind of, there's a theme I've had in my mind lately, and I just kind of let you guys both address this a little bit. We've mentioned it. We've kind of touched on it a little bit in our other stream team videos. I don't know if you've heard us talking about it, Jason, but it's kind of a term that we started just kind of mentioning a few times ago and talking about. We were talking about queen breeding, I think, and someone asked if I raised my own queens or something, and I said I've just began intentionally raising queens. I guess, you raise queens, I think, on accident. Sometimes you don't mean to, but being more intentional about what I'm doing is, I think, the word I used. And so I've kind of moved that into a theme, kind of my theme that I want to kind of adopt. Everybody kind of has something they look for. I've kind of been looking for something to lean on. And I think the term I'd like to use is intentional beekeeping. It's kind of a theme, a topic that I'd like to kind of push out there. Maybe an idea that I want to push on my channel, kind of get started. I've been quite the opposite of that over the years. I've kind of been a little bit all over the place at times. And so I'm kind of becoming, more in line with becoming more intentional. And I wondered if you had any thoughts on that, Jason, kind of, if you could kind of reflect on that a little bit. What to you, if you could kind of just what comes to your mind first when you think of intentional beekeeping, and how would you, what do you do to try and accomplish that?
Yeah, no, that's great, Bruce. And I actually think that it comes in phases, right? So when you're a new beekeeper, you go by the book. You get whatever the book tells you to do, right? Do this, check the box, check the box. You've never overwintered bees. You've never gone through a flow. You've never harvested. You've never had the things to really understand what to do and handle bees. You're just trying not to get stung, and you're trying to figure this all out. So that beginning part is really I call by the book. You should go by the book or what people tell you to do, your mentor. And then you start to transition and get in your own sort of, I call the innovation phase, right? And it's kind of the sort of before the intentional beekeeping, right? You started things just happen that you didn't expect, you didn't plan for. And that's beekeeping, honestly. That second phase is really what beekeeping is about, where you have all good intentions, you got the boxes being checked, and then all of a sudden this happens, right? You get a swarm, you need a split, your colony booms, a colony collapses. You start to see tons of swarm cells or something along those lines, and you have to react to it. And without the experience, you go back to the book, or you go to like YouTube, or you go to, talk to someone else. And I think that's that second phase of beekeeping, that the fight or flight phase, that will decide whether you're going to continue on and go head first into this, or if you're going to just kind of whittle, kind of go back and start to maybe go back to the book a little bit. And then over the next few years, you probably stop keeping bees. I think that's the fight or flight phase. But then I think the point in time when you've decided that now you're going to be an intentional beekeeper, to your point, Bruce, is where you've started to make a plan. You've seen what happens. You know how to lose colonies. You've felt that loss. You've bought bees. You've got a ton of empty equipment because you maybe have lost bees. And you're like, I'm in this. I'm doing this. I'm in this game. And then you start to do things intentionally. You start to make splits intentionally. You start to get, more equipment. You start to study the best ways bees are working in your apiary versus what you've read in those books. So it's kind of a phase thing, I think, in my opinion. I think we all get across those phases at different points. And it also ends up different ways. Some of us only want to maintain 15 to 20 colonies. Some of us only want us to manage more than that. Some of us have, want to have several hundred. I guess it depends on the beekeeper. And Ian has spoke about that a couple times, about you really learn quickly when you're starting to do things intentionally, what you can handle, right? Because if you're intentionally making splits, you have to intentionally be able to handle that many bees. And some people cannot handle that many bees. You start to cut corners, and then things start to impact you and your apiary practices. So that's my thoughts on it. I don't know if that works or makes sense to what you're saying.
Hey, thanks so much, Keith, for the super chat. We really appreciate all you guys who are on here watching the stream team tonight with us. I want to kind of, before we move on to you, Brian, I'd like to kind of show you if I can figure out how to split my screen here. We're going to try and everybody bear with me.
Brian 17. What is that? Who started the 17?
See?
No, Brian 20.
Before it, while Bruce is trying to figure out these technical things, literally spot on, Jason, for what you said describes from the starting of my beekeeping journey to exactly where I'm at right now. Because I went through,
this is brilliant.
It's exactly like this right here. I went through that phase where, and like you said, when you start out, you're looking at your resources as far as, your reference. You have your reference points and you follow those. things happen, like you said, you follow what the book says. It wasn't until, and when you said about losses, well, 2 years ago, I lost everything, and then I changed up my strategies and I started more of that intentional beekeeping with, well, here, I want to do this at this time to have this result. I want to do this and have this result. And now that's where I'm sitting, and that's where it's going to morph into, hashtag Brian 11.
Well, just take a quick look at this with me. These are some ideas I'm kind of working on, and we've discussed a little bit in the past, but tonight I want to take a little more time and just kind of talk about a little bit more. But this is the Dunning-Kruger effect. This does not just apply to beekeeping. This is, I think, a lot of hobbies, any skill that we try to obtain. This can go from everything from sports to chickens to boating to anything you can think of, even to your career. You get into something new. And it says the peak of Mount Know-It-All here. I don't know if I agree with that term as much as just, do people kind of think that, well, I know everything. But the thing is,
I agree with that a lot. I think we all have a level of, whether it's confidence or cockiness, there's a difference. Some will split. And I think that peak is a little bit more plateaued, and you go a little bit longer into that peak. It's not completely up and completely down. I think there's a little bit of a lag and a plateau in that, to where you have to determine whether you're being confident or you're being cocky, because some people do get cocky with it. And then
So a lot of times people jump into things and they go full all in. Really, honestly, whenever you start a new skill, you don't really know what you're doing very well, but you go all in, you just are just obsessed with it. Right. And so you end up here, you think you got it figured out, and then it all comes crashing down. You realize you come in this valley of despair. And I think this right here, and I think you described it perfectly, Jason, down here in the valley of despair, which is very low. That's when a lot of people just get out of it. Some people it happens in 2 months, and some people it happens in 2 years, and some people it might be 5 or 6 years of working at it and they just give up. But if you're willing to humble yourself a little bit and climb out of the hole and just keep trying, keep working at it, you begin to become more enlightened, and you learn. And as you gain those skills, you get better at it, and then you can become sustainable in what you're trying to do.
You know what else this reflects? I just realized this. My wallet.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, this is perfectly spot on, right? You get into beekeeping and you have no money, and then all of a sudden you think you got all this money because you sold your first batch of honey, and you think you got everything going, and then the next thing you turn around, boom, you got nothing again.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't plateau and climb as fast as it again eventually over time when you've gotten back into it and you've stabilized. But yeah, it does reflect, kind of reflects my wallet.
Let me show you another one here. I'm going to try and pull up another.
That's funny. And that chart right there is spot on as to why beekeeping in general, we lose so many people at about a 3-year mark.
Yep.
That 3-year mark.
Fight or flight.
Yep.
Let me show you all another one that's specific to beekeeping. And this is actually Randy Oliver's. You guys may have seen this before. Randy Oliver's version of this. And it's very good. And there's some little differences in this that are kind of subtle that I think this is the same thing, basically, if you can see it here.
Yep.
Same thing, same principle. But one thing I've noticed in his, at the beginning, this is beekeeper's maturity, he calls it. But it's a very similar graph. And Randy Oliver's name is on here, giving him credit. And I think these years kind of line up. The peak of expertise, kind of about what it was with me, 2 or 3, even 4 years in, you think you kind of got it figured out. It's not always the first year. The other graph makes it look like it's immediate, but in this, it's more of a lag. You buy your nuke, you buy your package, whatever, you get started, you're trying things, you're growing, get to the peak, and you think, man, I got it figured out. I'm going to just blow this thing out. And then all of a sudden, boom, like we talked about, down in the pit of despair. He calls it the pit of disillusionment.
But where you just kind of, though, in that pit, though, would it not? To Brian's point, it would split. There's not a continuing. Not everybody stays in the game and gets to
exactly. That's
abandoned at that point.
I think this pit of disillusionment, pit of despair, whatever you want to call it, that's when people. I think you have people that try golfing, they try hunting, they try, all kinds of stuff. Fixing up cars, Jason. I think you do that, don't you? Stuff like that. They try those things and they just don't feel like they're any good at it. So they just will quit, and beekeeping is no different. Any type of farming, gardening, anything you do, you gotta try stuff. So you feel like if you have any success at all, you kind of getting getting under control. But then you're going to have downtimes like this. And it really happens, I think, with beekeepers. Really, it's just a huge wave right here. And you start off in that period, but then you begin to dig yourself out. And one thing I like about this graph that's a little different than the other one is the other one had the plateau of productivity, or whatever you want to call it, or it was clear up here. Sustainability, call it. It was clear up here. In beekeeping, it's lower. I think there's a reason for this, and I might be wrong. Randy, if he's watching, which I doubt if he is, but he might need to correct me on this. But the slope of enlightenment is the same term, but then he calls it the plateau of productivity. It's not as high as this. In other words, you think you know it all, you think you're experienced, but you realize, I think in beekeeping, at least it's this case with me, is I realize I still don't know near as much as I probably thought I did right here. Right. And so it's kind of a slower growth. And I don't know if you ever get to this point right here where you feel like you know it all, you're going to end up right back down here, I believe. So he shows it as, I believe this is maybe the reason he did it, because he shows a little bit of a lower slope right here. You do get better, but you can be productive and continue to grow. But now I think since you've been humbled and you realize that these bugs in the box are truly a challenge, and you got to always be changing and growing, you can be successful and be productive, but you just don't need to ever get cocky again and think you know it all. And so I love this concept. And I think it happens to most beekeepers. And I believe, I've seen in our local bee club here, I've seen people that come in and they don't come back after, they never come back after the first year. And I think it's because this happens to them in some respect. They just don't maybe the support they need. I was here, and if I wouldn't have had some good mentors, and if I wouldn't have been determined to be, to make it work, if I wouldn't have had that just love for what I was doing, I might have just stepped out, because it's a very difficult thing to do. And so
it's almost in this illustration, it's almost like Randy should add in, and Randy, if you're listening, the odd chance you might be listening, not saying that your work is wrong. This is an addition, but it's almost like on that downward, you're going to hit that pit of disillusionment. It's almost like at that point you need to have two separate roads, and you hit a Y where those
one just comes out, just stays out, just continues down.
It just crashes into almost like an X.
Yeah.
And then the other one, that's where, you step back, you learn from your failures, and you dig out, and then you enter the plateau of productivity.
Okay. And one thing to remember too, this plateau of productivity, say for example, and I know that, and we'll talk about this probably a little bit more later, but number of hives is one way that people measure success, but that's not necessarily, doesn't have a whole lot to do with it necessarily, depending on what your goals are. But you might stay at this plateau of productivity might be a whole different thing 6 years in than it is 15 years in. Does that make sense? Like you might be kind of like Brian, happy to be at 10 colonies, and you might want to do that for 3 or 4 years, and then hashtag 20, hashtag 30 rolls in, Brian hashtag, and then he's up at 20 or 30. But right now he's saying no, but Brian, he's even opened the door a couple of times to getting up to a few more. And so these goals can kind of shift and change, I think, as with any skill that we obtain in life, as interests change, as goals change, as abilities change. Plateau of productivity means that you're just able to kind of sustain, keep your bees alive, and just continue to work towards your goals. You're going to have dips. You're going to have years where you may lose more, and you may be humbled again. That still happens to me. But I love this. I love the concept. It's just been really kind of simmering in my brain. It's just kind of been there working in my brain the last probably week or two, or even 3, just this whole concept. I think Greg talked about this chart, and the concepts have just been in my mind a lot lately. And I think it's something that needs to be, we need to kind of work on. And so, but I think
we need to share it more with new beekeepers, right? So we want to kind of, does it change the timeline? Does it change that cycle? Probably not. It may help. But I think I get a lot of questions with new beekeepers that don't even have bees yet. And they're like, hey, how long do I get honey is the number one question, and I try to refocus their question on, what are your goals? What are your goals? And I think a lot of that chart and how it's reacting is understanding your goals in beekeeping. Like, why are you doing this? It's not an inexpensive hobby. It's not a hobby without heartache, right? And frustration. Is it easy? I think that's a big question I get as well. Like, how much time do you spend out in your hives? Well, if you're asking me, when are you going to get honey, and how much time do you have to spend taking care of bees? then you probably shouldn't be a beekeeper. You probably should just buy a bottle of honey from me or Bruce or Brian and just move on, right? Because you're going to spend way too much money or waste too much money trying to figure out whether this is for you. So I think that's where that's a little different. But and showing this to new beekeepers, I'm actually going to take those two images and sort of frame up one and clean it up from my perspective and use it in my Beekeeping 101 classes locally here.
Nice. I think that's great.
It just shows to these beekeepers what they have in store for them and not get frustrated, because I don't want them to get frustrated. I don't want them to walk away in that valley of despair that maybe some of us are never prepped for. So.
Yeah. One thing that I've had, I often have people say, hey, I want to get into beekeeping, tell me what I need to do into beekeeping. Or some people will just go ahead and say, hey, I bought my hive and where can I find bees? Some people do that. Other people are just a little more careful about it, which would be wise. I think I was one of those guys that just was like, I'm going to be a beekeeper. And 3 days later, I thought about it a little while, but I just jumped right in with both feet. But that's not the case with everybody. But I tell people, why don't you come hang with me? I've got an extra bee suit or two, and we'll just come and let's go through some bees, because beekeeping is something that it's kind of like, it's kind of strange, but I compare it to football. If you've got a kid that wants to play sports or wants to play football, some parents are really into that. Like they feel like my kid's going to be a future NFL Hall of Famer, or he's going to play in the major leagues, or, my kid, of course, because I was a decent high school athlete, he's going to make it in the NBA, any type of sport. But when it comes to, particularly to football, I believe firmly, and I played football in college. I love the sport. It's before beekeeping. It was probably my biggest passion after, my family and church and stuff like that, and my God. But it's one of those things where, look, if you've got a kid that doesn't want to play football, it's something you have to love. It hurts, it's difficult, it's painful. And though it's a lot of fun for a lot of people, it's just not for everybody. And the comparison I'm making here is that I believe it's a little bit like beekeeping. Like we're absolutely, you even say it's an obsession, Jason, right? It's obsessed with it. I mean, I love it. And I've just been hooked ever since the first time I kind of really got into a colony intentionally and looked to see what was going on. But it's just not for everyone. So if you got someone who really wants to get into bees because they really think they're cute and they want to help nature and everything like that, and then they come and they get in a beehive with you and they're terrified of the bees, they might be able to figure that out before they order $500 or $600 worth of equipment and put the bees in there, instead of just being scared of them when they get in them, not knowing what to do, and then the bees dying on them and them getting frustrated and quitting. Let's just come and hang out with me for a day or two and see what you think, and we'll kind of talk through the process. And then if you still want to do it, we'll work to that goal. And had a lot of people say they wanted to do it. Not a lot of people have done it, but it's kind of a neat experience too, to see. Just one quick example. We had a kid come out. He kind of heard about me through a mutual friend. And thanks, Jason, for that super chat. You didn't have to do that. But I
only chose $9.99 because it was green.
I don't know how to make it. Oh, Eagles. I see you. I hear you there. Yes.
How about Jalen Hurts? He's a Roll Tide boy.
Yes, Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith, right?
There you go. All right. Sorry, didn't be distracted.
No, it's okay. We had a kid. We harvested honey last July. My buddy told me, he's like, hey, I've got this kid. He's like a 15-year-old kid, and he's interested in getting in bees. Can he help you harvest honey this weekend or whenever you harvest? I said, well, I'm like, is he pretty tough? Because when we harvest honey, it's not always fun. I mean, it's going to be quite the experience. Well, the kid and his dad showed up. The young man, his dad showed up actually in that last honey harvest video where we pulled the honey. They were in that video back in July, and he hung in there, and he still, when we were done, said he wanted bees, but it was just too much. The bees were really kind of feisty that day, just were taking their honey. It was kind of a crazy day, and it just got to be a little bit too much and overwhelming. I don't think anyone needs to show up for their very first experience with bees and go through pulling honey from like 70 different colonies. It's best if you want to do that, then come when I'm just doing 1 or 2 colonies or whatever, and we'll do it. But supposedly, when they left, he said he still wanted to get bees, and I hope he did. But that was quite the sensation, it's sensory overload, something like that, But anyway, so yeah, Stan Gore up here, I saw where he said 80% of new beekeepers bag it before 3 years. I believe that to be true. So yeah. I thought I'd just share those graphs. I thought they're pretty cool. And make a, I'm trying to,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
You're
I
all
do
over these.
something similar, Bruce, here locally. I do something called a Rent-A-Hive program, which is a way for beekeepers to not be fully invested in bees, and me also help from preventing bee loss. Because what I end up seeing is I have people that are a little overzealous. They don't know what they're getting into. They just want bees. They just want honey, and they get into it. They buy, a nuke from me or a package from me. They buy all this equipment. They buy all this gear. They go set up, and then they're calling me either 100 times for questions, which is fine, or they kind of, and they get losses and they get frustrated, and then they're next thing they're selling their equipment on eBay or Facebook Marketplace the next week, or they'll call me back. You want to buy my equipment back? Or a month or a year later, or whatever. And so I have a program that allows them to get a flavor of beekeeping, where they basically are buying the bees, but everything else, the equipment, the gear, is all provided for them that first year in my apiary. Their bees stay in my apiary. They come over, they do 2-hour coursework. They do additional 6 sessions where we inspect their hive. We go through that whole full year of teaching them how to handle bees, getting stung, what gear they need, what gear they don't really need. And then it helps them that when they get to that full year, if they overwinter, right, we help relocate their hive to their apiary, and they can ask questions and prep for it too. Because they're like, okay, well, I know I need a hive stand that's going to be like this, because I'm not just randomly buying whatever I saw online. I know I only need this equipment because I didn't just randomly buy the giant bee package that I saw starter kit online. I don't need 100 of those pieces of equipment. I only need these things. So that's why I do that, and it helps. I have a lot of beekeepers that have gone through it and actually have stopped. I'd say it's probably I think maybe Stan's percentage probably is close. Most of them have moved their hives to their home, and others have decided not to do it any further. So it's a good program. It works for me.
Yeah. Looks like Flower Street Farm does something kind of similar up there. That's a great idea. You set them up for success. I mean, that's what you're doing. And that's really what, if you have the heart of a teacher, that's what you should do. There are those people who will sell people bees year after year after year and just keep selling them bees and just, taking their money and not helping them. But anyone, in this community, I think that we've tried to get going here with the stream team and with the whole Hive Life, I think community, the idea is that, let's share what we know. It's Greg's quote, his saying is, be the lighthouse. And that's really what we're trying to do here. So I like that. And my problem is I'm just not very good at what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not very good with my time, like budgeting time. Like I just am of course I do have quite a few colonies. It's hard for me just to get everything done that I need to get done and be able to do all the teaching and things I'd like to. But if anyone ever actually asks me, certainly they can come and hang out with me and we can go through them and I can kind of show them what I'm doing. And I have some people that have come and they step right in. They aren't familiar with bees, but I show them once or twice and they can just go to work. Like the Justin kid that helped me this summer with splits and with harvesting. That guy, he's not afraid of anything. He's a hard worker. He's tough. He's wiry. And he just gets in. You say, hey, Justin, this is what we're looking for. This is what we're doing. And within 2 or 3 colonies, he's just right there keeping up. Wow. He just gets it. He picks it up quickly. But some people, I wasn't that good at it, and I'm still not as good as I could be, but I'm still learning, and it took me a while. I still have a hard time sometimes finding the queen and things like that. But some people can just say, there she is. And I'm like, where, even still, but some people just have the eye, they can just do it. But anyway, that was a great discussion. I appreciate it. Brian, I would like to, let's go ahead and maybe give away I've got a couple prizes tonight. Nothing real super crazy, but just a couple things I like to give away. And the first one is,
what do you want to do first?
We're going to do the Hive tool. Got another one of these Hilco Hive tools right here. I can pull it out. Should have pulled it out before we got started. One of John's Hilco Hive tools.
That J-hook style like that.
I love these. My favorite Hive tool was always just a standard one. I don't like the flat J-hooks because they fall down between I just don't like them as much. But it's got both the J-hook and this. I almost can't use either one of the other kinds now. It's got both features on it. So we're going to do this. Everybody put hashtag Hive tool in here. And we'll go for a couple minutes, and then we'll spin for this thing, and we'll get it sent out to you.
Awesome.
But I I got one of these at Hive Life last year. They were giving away at Hive Life, and I'm still using that thing. And it's just been, it got me through the whole season, really. I don't think I used it right away. But once I started using it, if I can't find it, I've got 2 or 3 other ones laying there in my truck. But if I can't find that one, I kind of panic. I'm like, I want my hive tool. So anyway, I love that thing. It's a good quality. It's a quality hive tool.
I went through, so when I was wrapping things up, clean the extractor, clean my uncapping tank, and I was just cleaning equipment. I went through everything and got all of my hive tools together, and I cleaned them down with super clean. So if anybody's looking for, I should just do a video and throw in a little segment on it, but I got some of that super clean stuff, and it literally, they look brand new. But I think, Bruce, I think altogether I have like 9 or 10 hive tools. I finally went through them all in one spot, and I looked and I was like, what in the heck do I need like 10 hive tools for?
It's so easy to set them down somewhere and lose them, especially when they're not painted, if they're like this basic silver color. If some of them, like the red ones, are a little easier, but if someone would just paint them like a bright orange or a bright yellow, it would make it easier to see. But I'll walk around sometimes and look, and then I just, oh, well, there it is. It was right in front of me the whole time. So
Jason,
Grammy's got a great idea here. She says you should make wind chimes.
There you go.
I like it.
I like it. Good idea, actually. Grammy, that's a really good idea. I'm going to take that away. I got so many of those darn hive tools. I'm going to make a wind chime hive tool. That'd be really cool, actually.
Jason, that's not counting the little one that I got from you.
Oh, that's right. See,
that's on my.
Then would it be 37.5? Because it's not quite a full hive tool.
Right. Yeah.
All right, let's get up to, if we get up to 85, we'll spin it. So let's give some more. If you want a hive tool, throw it in there. We're up to 85 more. We'll spin it.
Let's do some hive tools here.
Yeah, 148 people. Hey, thanks everyone for watching. Good golly, we got a lot of people on here tonight. That's awesome.
I'll tell you what, Bruce. If you give me a second,
okay,
I'd be willing to donate something to sweeten the hive tool pot. If you would humor me.
Sure.
Let's just see what I've got here.
Hashtag sweeten the hive tool.
Hashtag sweeten the pot. Right.
Are we gonna do another one, or are we gonna?
We could do another one, or we could sweeten it. Whatever you would like. You tell me.
Why don't we just go with this one, since we've already got it in there, and we've got 90 people, 85 people that are that have already done this. I hate to.
No.
Yeah, let's spin it. Let's go. Hit 85. We're gonna spin it.
All right. Let's see. I see a lot of familiar names in there. Wow. There we go. Awesome. Yeah, I know he's in here.
All right, Triton. Email Bruce at brucesbees.com. And it's just Bruce Says Bees with the S in there, Bruce at brucesbees.com. Or just go, you can go on my YouTube channel as well. It's in the about place. I think it's in there, the email. So shoot me an email and we'll get it out to you.
Congratulations.
So Jason, do you want to give a hive tool away? I've got another one, or you want to do that with whatever your gift is? That way you can send, they can be sent
about. If I share my screen here, can I do this? I think I can.
Should be able to. Yep.
A window.
Yeah, that way you should be able to send it all from the same place. That would make it easy.
Let me just see if I've got. There we go. Found it. All right, and hit share. Tell me if this works. Can you see it?
There it
is. Mini Bohemia apiary hive tool, right here.
I like those.
Little J hook. You can put it in your pocket. I'd be happy to donate one of them to a lucky winner this evening.
So let's just go hashtag Bohemia. Does that work?
Yeah, that's right.
Do that. All right. You want to go ahead and let's go hashtag Bohemia, Brian?
Yeah, let me throw that in here. I almost had it.
Hashtag Bohemia. I don't know if I have any sitting at my desk that I could show, or I just can go back to the screen again. I don't know what you guys would prefer. I don't know. I can never see it when I share the screen, so it was. I don't know what that looked like when I shared it.
It looked just like mine did, except with your thing up there. It looked great. It worked out well.
Okay, good.
Yep. Hashtag Bohemia.
Hashtag Bohemia. Let's throw it in there.
It'll be that right there.
Mm-hmm.
So comment hashtag Bohemia, and you
Let's
will
see how
win.
it goes.
Yeah,
There we go.
Jason,
Awesome.
I need to just throw that hive tool in my bag because I do like the size of it. And for those that are wondering,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just the functionality of that tool, I could see where it's just so useful. So I
It
like
comes
the
in
hook.
useful, yeah. It does especially when you put your other hive tool down.
Yeah,
And you just need to pop a frame, right? Or you just need to move something pretty quick.
that's it.
And on my jackets that I have side pockets up here and front pockets. So I
Yeah.
always have that little side tool pocket that when I put the full hive tool in there, it's kind of in the way where I can drop a little one in there. And if I forget my hive tool in another part of a yard somewhere, another box, I can reach in there and go, I got it if I need it. So
Man,
Yeah.
people want that thing, Jason. Look at that. Let's get
Sweet.
to 100 on this one. Let's go to 100 on this one.
There we go.
92. Wow.
Hit 100. We'll spin.
Woo.
They're wanting
That's
like
awesome.
We're not.
like a-
Hold on. Disclaimer. There is a disclaimer on this. We are not giving away this hat this evening.
Yeah,
We are not giving away this hat. I've already given
that
one
was
away. I'm not
that
giving
was
another away.
Yappy's. I know I kind of jumped on that
I'm
train, but that
looking
was
over in the comments to make sure Yappy wasn't in here before I offered up something because I'll be giving away my shirt if that was the case.
I should text Yappy. Be like,
No,
you need to
don't
get
do
up.
that.
you opened that can of worms up yourself, Jason. I hadn't even thought
I
about it,
know.
to be
See,
honest.
look, see, you got Rob's over there trying. No
I know,
hat. Dang,
Rob's.
he's out.
Oh, goodness
Oh,
gracious.
there's
So
100.
much fun. We're at 100. Let's
There
do
we
it.
go.
All right, Bohemia Hive tool. Here we go.
We're drawing it. Oh man. Yappy's a mess.
Swarmstead.
Swarmstead.
Oh,
There we go.
Bruce. Bruce gets it. His name
Bruce,
is
good job.
right?
Congratulations, Bruce.
Hey, Bruce, send Jason your Jason, where's he need to send that contact info?
He's in PA, I think. Bruce, I think you're in PA, right? Is that correct? I don't know. Comment in the send me. You know how to get a hold of me. I'm sure. Hit me at Bohemia Bees or whomever, and we'll get it to you. And just send me an address.
All right. Well, good deal.
Congratulations.
Well, that was fun. I do have a couple more things for later on that I would like to give away, just some smaller items. But if you look kind of behind our pictures here in the screen, in the backdrop, you'll see those bottles. Those were some wedding favors we gave when my daughter got married. See the glass muth. I've learned that's how you say it according to YouTube. Muth or muth. Some people say muth and some say muth, but I don't know. Anyway, I've put a video out a few days ago that on how I did those bottles. They turn out really nice, and I guess I could pull a picture up of them, but they're just beautiful and they make good gifts. And so if any of you would like to go on there, if you don't even want to try that, then I'd encourage you to do that because it turns out, it's really nice. But if not, you can order them from me as well. Let me see if I can pull up a picture here for those of you, in case you didn't see that video. I'm still trying to figure out this.
You notice how
I've got a new computer. I've got a MacBook, and I figured I was going to go all in because I'm really trying to up my game a little bit, and I figured that it would allow me to do that. It just seems to work better for what I'm trying to do. But let me share this screen right here, and if you'd like to go watch that video to see how to do it yourself, you can. I'd appreciate it. But if not, then how do I share screen? I still have to figure it out every time, Brian, because I'm not as fast as Brian is.
present.
So here we go.
Yeah, those
so
look awesome.
These take a lot of work. A lot of people just buy the muth bottles. They throw the honey in there and put the cork in, and that is a nice presentation and slap a label on there. But there's actually a local guy here. I'm not even sure if he still does bees. He might. That kind of I got the idea from, and he didn't quite do it the way I do it. His looked really nice too, but he kind of got my wife and I thinking about it, or my wife and me thinking about it, and we kind of just came up with we ordered the punch. We got the punch from Hobby Lobby. People have asked about that. My wife got a corner rounder. She got it from Creative Memories, but I think you could probably get those at Hobby Lobby as well, or any place like that. And I actually had this stamp right here, custom made from a place called the Print Mint on Etsy. There's other companies as well. And then we just kind of worked the process out. It's a little tricky to do the wax, but Brian, I don't know if you can share kind of the link to that video maybe in there, but that video where I show how to do it, if you want to do it, fine. But once again, these are available. We can get some of these made up, and if you want to order some, they'll be on the website, brucesbees.com. Also, if you just want to try some local Alabama honey, you can also order it just there, that website. Yeah. So anyway, that's just kind of a little idea for you. I thought I'd share them. And I've been hesitant to share that because, it's kind of like anytime you kind of come up with something that you like or you think is really nice, you kind of want to keep it close to the vest. But hey, we're about sharing here. It's about being the lighthouse. And so if I've got something that works for me, I'm all about sharing it with other people. If it works for them, it may work for them as well. So anyway, so just thought I'd share that too. Kind of fun. We've been doing this now for, I think 2019 was when my daughter's wedding was, when we made these bottles that are in the back there. So I think it was earlier that fall when we started doing it. And they work extremely well for gifts. I had someone today order 35 of the small ones for their business. They throw them in some gift bags they have. And there's really nice for presents and gifts and party favors.
Wedding favors are real big. That we do a lot of those around here for wedding favors, the small jars of honey like that. Yeah.
And they, that you do make the profit margins a little more, but the way I do them, it's a lot more work. Like it took my wife and I to do the ones we did, it took us a couple of evenings, the wax dipping and the punching the labels and the way we do them, it takes a lot of time to do that. So it's not easy, but they are a beautiful product and people will pay more for them because it's just a real nice presentation. So, speaking of, what are you laughing at, Brian? I missed something.
I'll tell you after.
Okay. So I saw a question here, and we could go on to this. How is everybody feeling about OA? So why don't we just make that a topic tonight? Let's talk about oxalic acid treatments for mites. I know that a lot of people feel like this is the time of year to do it if it's not too cold. I mean, when the brood goes down, that's when the best time to do it is. So Brian, why don't we start off with you on this topic? What do you think about OAV or oxalic acid in any form? What are your thoughts?
I like it this time of year right now. And it's funny because my last video, I had, a couple things. I was checking the fondant and just checking the top of the hives just to see how things looked. And then because it was 50, I forget what it was that day, 56 or 57 degrees, I hit all of my colonies with oxalic acid using one of Rob's vape guns. And I had a lot of people asking me, oh, well, how often are you going to do that? And if I can hit them once a month, with OA throughout the winter, I figure, yeah, it's great because right now, those colonies, at least in my area, Jason's might be similar, but Jason, you start you're about 4 weeks earlier than what our season starts. So it might be a little different, but right now there's so little brood in my colonies that what number of mites do you have behind cappings? Minimal is compared to in the summer. So right now, when you're using OA, I mean, you are really zapping those mites. So why not? I say, why not? If it's, and for me, if I see a day and I'm home and it's 50 or above and I see the bees flying, to me, that means, well, they're not, in a tight cluster. I'm going to zap them. So that's just my plan throughout the winter. If I can get 2 treatments, like I got one in Thanksgiving Day, if I can get another treatment in December, another one in January, I think I would probably skip February, but that's my plan, what I want to try and do. But, we'll see what Mother Nature lets me do.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Jason?
So I might get a lot of hate mail on this, but I won't treat at all during the winter. And the only reason I don't do it is because there in my region of the country or my area, the temperature really doesn't break 50 degrees for them to break cluster. And the rare times that it does, their guts are so full of crap, literally, that they're doing cleansing flights. They're coming back in. They're doing what they're needing, trying to find some water sources and things like that if they can. and they're coming back in to come back and build that cluster back. It is an ideal time. Believe me, I agree with you 100%, because the low brood, the uncapped brood, I just don't want to stress them out anymore. So I stopped treating after my last OA and or apivar treatment that I do in the late fall, and really just hope for the best. I mean, that's just how I approach it.
Well, that's very reasonable. I mean, like I say, if it's freezing out, you can't do it then, but I guess the key is that you do it when the brood is at its minimum. Now down here, rarely do hives go completely broodless. Just be honest, here in my area, they don't. But I think that you can use it as a cleanup treatment after using something else. I also think that right now, actually, they're probably as low. I haven't really been in them much. But they're probably as low as they're going to be. For about the next month, the brood is going to be as low as it's going to be here. We have some that's still going to have a fair amount of brood in them, but I figure it's not going to hurt anything. And I think that I've treated pretty heavy for mites earlier in the year. So my mite tests have been pretty good overall within threshold. If it's warm enough in a couple of days, I'm going to go out to where I've been treating for three weeks with Rob's new instant vape. I just got one of those bad boys. Let me show a picture of that thing, man. I know that y'all have seen them, and I was a little late to the party. I was a little late to the party on that thing. Everybody else kind of got, most other people, other people got those before I did, but
I still don't have one.
It's something else.
Rob is literally like 2 hours away from me, hour and 45, and I still don't have one. And that's not Rob's problem. That's my problem.
Yeah. So there it is. Those things, and they're not cheap. It's an expensive tool. And so, I think that if people want to treat with oxalic acid vapor, you need to look at the cost as well. I mean, if you've only got like 8 or 10 colonies, this thing probably isn't what you need, because I'm just going to be honest. I hope Rob isn't mad at me, but it's an expensive piece of equipment, but the speed that I'm able to use this thing with, out there where I'm trying to treat, 70, 100 colonies, at a time, is just amazing. And so it definitely has improved my game a lot, or it's sped up my game significantly. So that it's been a great tool. And I do really like Rob's, until he came out with this, I've used his other one, the main Lorabi's vaporizer that you plug in, the standard one. I still use that thing. I've got that thing. And so I did have there's a question that came up on here about the tip of that thing will sometimes clog up, and there's a couple of ways that I get that thing cleaned out. What I'll do is, the little honey scratchers you use to kind of remove cappings from honey. It's like a scratcher, I guess you call it. I'm not sure what you call it, but if you'll bend one of those tines down a little bit, you can fit that in there, and it'll clean that tube out quickly. I also know I've got a friend that told me here locally he uses a very small drill, which I'm a little hesitant to do that. That seems like that
metal pipe cleaner tip. Yep, a metal pipe cleaner would work as well.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yep.
But Rob, if I know Rob,
a firearm owner, they'll understand the cleaning sizes that exist for firearms. There's a very tiny, thin one that you can pull out of your kit that you probably never will use in your cleaning of your firearms, and you can use that for. That's what I put in my kit.
Wow. Okay, because it's a tiny little hole. So Rob, if you've got any ideas, if I know you're on here, if you could kind of share in the comments, or if anyone has any questions, if you had issues with that, you can contact Rob. You can email him or shoot him a call, and he'll be glad to let you know what to do on that. He's really good at that. So anyway, he's good at answering. Customer service is great. So don't just worry about it or try to figure out, or just be irritated about it. Just give Rob a call, and he can help you figure that out. Another thing that I do to clean both that tool and this new one is and what Rob told me to do on the new instant vape is to let the temperature drop to about 200, 250, pour a little bit of water in the bowl in this new silver one. You can do a similar thing in the other one, and what it'll do is it'll start to boil a little bit there. It gets hot. And if you fill it up to where it gets to the tip, it starts coming out of the tip, then you can dump it out and do that a couple of times. That'll clean it out really nicely. And then, but if you're going to, like, if it's the end of the day, if you really want to clean the whole thing out really good, what I do is I'll just let that water completely boil out. When you see the temperature begin to rise above the boiling point, 200, 250 to 300 or whatever, then you'll know that it's clean. It'll be just dry, because I hate to leave water down in that thing. I want it to be dry when I store it. but once it heats up, between bee yards or whatever, once it heats back up, all that water will evaporate out of there. So that's it is important to keep them clean. I found if you don't keep these things clean, they will clog up and they're not quite as effective. And so you need to clean them every so often. It's not hard to do, but you do need to clean out that little bowl and get all that oxalic acid out of there.
While we're talking about Rob, everybody, if you have not seen those that have purchased an instant vape, see there, I added the T finally. I got it right. I got it right. So those that have purchased an instant vape, he has a carrying case that, and I think they might be on his site. They might not. I don't know. But if they're not on there, I know they'll be on there very soon. But the case, it fits perfect down in there. The plungers, I think there's spots for 3 of the plungers in it too. And
I believe it's like an ammo can that he's using too. Which is pretty cool. Yeah.
You figure if you're treating hives and you just go over, to your car and you set that hot, vaporizer in there, you've got to protect it somehow. Plop it down into that can, go onto your other yard. So yeah, there you go.
But anyway, so that's kind of, and I will tell you this too, kind of moving on to the overall general, concepts of oxalic acid vapor. People treat all year round with it. It's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to hurt anything to treat in the summertime. But honestly, I think studies have shown that if you use oxalic acid vapor when your hive is full of brood, it's not going to really knock the mites back. Now, it might keep them at a bay. It might keep them at a certain level, but it's not going to knock the numbers down. Like you're not going to probably wash a 10 and then come back after 3 weeks of treatment when the hive's full of brood and wash a 2. It's just not going to happen. Now, you may not wash a 20 that second time because it may keep them kind of at bay because it does kill the phoretic mites that are actually on the bees, but it does not penetrate the cappings. And so it is not the most effective treatment in the summertime. And in the past, before the last couple of years, before I became more quote unquote intentional about what I was doing, that's what I used. I'm like, well, I'll just kill all the mites on the bees. And even, it'll help you decrease the numbers. But honestly, from what I've heard, as I've tried to pay more attention and listen and be more intentional about what I'm doing, it's not a super beneficial treatment. It's not going to hurt anything, but it's not a super beneficial treatment to utilize in the summertime or when it's all brooded up. Would you guys agree with that? Is that what you've heard, or is that what you understand, or what are your thoughts on that? What do you think, Jason?
Agree. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think it's a balance, right? I don't think you need to, and I know we're talking about OA here. So I like to rotate, and I like to do other things in addition to whether it be the OA or whether it be Apivar or something else, whether it's mechanical or whether it's, we'll call it, pseudochemical, right? Yeah. So whether it's integrated pest management, brood breaks, things that you're doing, I think it's a combination throughout the year to give you the best strategy against the mites and not just one thing. I know some people that use, OA constantly all the time, and they have the same loss rates that someone who doesn't use OA at all or doesn't use treatment at all in some cases. So I think it really depends on your bees, your colonies. Testing is my last 2 videos that I put out on the OA side or on the treating side. My biggest video out of them was, it's not about what you test or what you do to treat. It's how you test and testing and knowing that what you have. And that's really the approach I take. So
I agree with you on that. And I just think it's once again, like Mike Berry says, this is not a how-to video. It's a how I do or how we do video. That's why we like to have guests on here. That's why we like to have these live chats to discuss and toss ideas out to get people in the comments to say what they're doing. But each person does have to figure out on their own what they're going to do.
I agree.
And, as I've kind of waded through that graph we showed earlier, as I've gotten onto that plateau of hopefully sustainability, of success, I've just figured that I need to start listening to people who are successful, listen to people like Cayman and Bobby and Ian and Ian and you guys and people that are having success instead of just doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Hey, let's be proactive on this thing. So that kind of leads us up to the next topic. The next topic I'd like to discuss, I kind of wrote it down here. It goes along with intentional beekeeping a little bit. The next topic is being proactive versus reactive. Now, I think that once again, it's the same thing we talked about before, the concept that whenever you're starting a sport, whenever you're starting a skill, whatever you're doing, even in school, learning the stuff, much of what you do is reactive, right? Think about, you mentioned, like Jalen Hurts. I know Randall Cunningham, I think back in the past, or was it him or one of the quarterbacks that was an Eagles quarterback? I can't remember if it was him or if it was a quarterback after Randall Cunningham. One of those guys.
Vic.
He wore, no, it wasn't Vic. He wore a special kind of glasses, something when he was throwing the ball.
Oh, yeah.
And what that did is it slowed the game down. I think it was one of the Eagles quarterbacks, but it made it to where, his brain became adjusted to the speed. It seemed normal with those glasses that inhibited his vision. So when he took those glasses off, everything slowed down and became more doable or easier for him. And so in beekeeping, it's similar to that. I think in any skill that you learn, at first, I think you're reactive, like everything comes at you very fast. Everything comes at you. It's just like you get overwhelmed. But as you continue to work at it, as you continue to become more intentional and learn, I guess you could compare it to things start to slow down a little bit. It becomes easier to do. And so what do you guys think about the proactive versus reactive? You got any thoughts on that? Jason, why don't we start with you on that one?
That's a very broad topic, because it can mean proactive in what, right? Proactive in your management, your feeding, your preparation for what equipment that you should have. I mean, I think the biggest error, or the biggest thing that new beekeepers get caught up with when you talk about being proactive, is understanding that bees are going to expand, right? And that's one thing that I don't think people think about, and they don't have enough equipment, or they catch a swarm and they're not prepared for it and what to put in it, what it needs to fit in, and they're shoving it into the nuke box they got for free when they bought the nuke of the other hive that they have over here, and they're not prepared for it. So I think when I interpret your question about being proactive, it's anticipating what your growth strategy is, and your apiary growth strategy, and making sure that you're prepared for that, right? So going into these various seasonal changes that happen in our colonies, the various things that we prepare for, preparing to know that that you likely will have to feed, and what does that involve, right? Preparing to know that if you're going to harvest, and what is that going to involve, and don't get caught without the proper tools to do it, whether it's equipment from catching a swarm, whether it's feeding and the stuff you need there, or harvesting and the stuff you need there. That to me is the proactive in beekeeping, because you can't control what the bees are going to do. The bees are going to do what the bees do. You can give them the box that they live in. You can hope that they, have a good strategy from a splitting, or from a queen rearing perspective. You could have.
Uh-oh, he froze on us.
We should take a picture right there.
Yeah. Jason, I don't know if you can hear us. He froze up on us there. Uh-oh. Man.
I think he's dropped out. I do want to take a picture right there. I'm going to go back to this 1 hour, 5 minutes, and boom.
Yeah.
But you know what? I can just pick up right where he left off there. Being proactive. So if you look at this time of the year, okay, we're November 30th. Okay. Throw water on him, Swarmstead says. That'll wake him up. But being proactive now, you figure, okay, well, and even non, okay, I got to throw out a disclaimer before I go ahead and say anything. All right. I'm not going to expand much next year. All right. That's it. But being proactive in my apiary, okay, right now, you figure you have to look at what are your goals in the future. Okay. Where do I want to be? And
there he is.
Being the proactive beekeeper right now, what you can do is recognize where you want to be at next year. And like what Jason was saying, you can get your equipment and everything ready instead of being reactive where, let's say I don't touch a single thing throughout the winter. Everybody thinks that beekeeping in the wintertime, there's no work to do. Wrong. Because if I don't touch any equipment, prep things right now, and look at the number where I want to be at next year, you all know what happens in springtime. And those new beekeepers, if there's any beekeepers that are in here that are first year beekeepers, your first year that was probably my easiest year ever, because you sail through and you're watching them build up and you watch them do this and that. And it's great. And look at them building this comb and gosh, and it's beautiful, Then you get through winter. And when you enter into that very first spring, when your colonies just explode, and that's that point where if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I need to do splits. Oh crap, I don't have equipment. I got to place an order. For me, oh geez, I got to go to Blue Sky. I got to do this. And that's being reactive to the situation. You are never going to get caught up. So that's where just piggybacking, being that proactive person right now, that's where I'm really going to look at. And I see the Brian 20 there. Where do I want to be at next year? And yes, I probably will at one point next year, let's say. And I was just talking to a coworker today about it because he's interested in bees. So I told him, I said, if you want bees, I'll hook you up next year. But let's say of my 11, let's say 8 or 9, even 8 make it out of the wintertime. You all know with that, I could be at 24 like that. And I don't want to be that high. So for me, what my plan going into next year is going to be is get my colonies set up as far as equipment wise, my boxes of where I want to be at. And anything beyond that, I'm just going to get some nuke boxes ready, so that way I can sell those off. But you just always have to stay ahead of them. If you're always one step back, you will never catch up.
Yeah, I've had that experience. Jason, do you remember where you were or kind of where you're at? I think you're going the same direction Brian was, but is there anything you'd like to add? We lost you there. You said you lost your internet for a couple minutes.
Yeah, my internet, we have a storm coming through, so I apologize. It's going to cut out here. Hopefully it doesn't anymore, but we'll make it through the rest of it. But yeah, I agree 100% with Brian. And as I was mentioning, it's having things ready that you've learned from the prior year bee season, and to know that you're ahead of the game and prepared for the next bee season, right? It's ensuring that you've got your equipment in place. I have a task that I do every winter, and I call it frame management, right? Frame management is both comb and frame. Nothing frustrates me more when swarm season hits in the spring and I'm building frames while there's a swarm hanging on a tree because I ran out of frames because all my hives are growing, right? So it's having that preparedness through the winter to have, 2 or 3 dozen, or have 3 or 4 boxes ready with frames in case you need them, even if they're undrawn. And then the other step that I do, this is a little strategy that's helped me to mitigate the small hive beetle and the wax moths, is that, comb or used comb, drawn comb from a dead out, everything goes into the freezer. No matter what, I cycle everything through the freezer. If it's just going to hang on a rack, even if I'm not going to use it until, mid-spring, late summer, whenever, it all goes through the freezer and sits in the freezer for at least 48 hours to kill any of those small hive beetle eggs or wax moth, eggs that are stuck between the crevices. The minute they warm up and they sit in a dark corner, they can hatch out, and then they'll tear apart your good comb. So I do that. I freeze all my frames and build new frames. That's one of the things that I do during the winter.
So I've got a similar take, but a little bit of a different take. I'm going to put this back up here on the screen. You can tell I like these graphs and I like my ability to use this technology now.
Yes.
Look back at this again. And for those who are maybe just listening in, it's the Beekeeper's Maturity graph by Randy Oliver. Has the first little upscale where this up slope right here where you just kind of, it says at the peak of this, I know it all, but I think what happens a lot of times in this initial peak is, to me, reactive when it comes to overall strategies with beekeeping is kind of the first step. Like, you don't know what you're doing really. You're putting your bees in there, you're looking at what they're doing, you're trying to recover sometimes for mistakes you make, or trying to actually learn how to read the bees. Does that make sense? So you react to a lot of what they do. And so sometimes you're just reacting. It gets frustrating. Like you said, Jason and Brian, both, you don't have the equipment ready or things like that. And I still go through that sometimes with the number of colonies I have. I still am always trying to play catch up. So reactivity, you're seeing the bees are like, you got a swarm entry. Oh my gosh, how do I catch a swarm? That kind of stuff. So after a while, it can become overwhelming. You can fall down here again. But then kind of what happened to me within the last couple of years is I just decided to be more proactive, more intentional is another word I think for that, where you kind of plan ahead, like you decide, okay, well, last year I lost, in 2021, I lost probably close to 50% of my colonies. And it was because I was not ahead of them. I wasn't proactive enough. I wasn't treating properly. I was not doing those things, the big three, great queens, dead mites, and proper nutrition. I wasn't doing that. So I got slimed out by beetles. I think a lot of it had to do with mites. I think I had old queens, just a lot of reasons for that. So I decided at that point in time, I was going to try and do better at really learning the art of beekeeping more than just trying to go out there willy-nilly and react to everything. And so I've done better this year, I think, with that. Once again, I see 2023 on the horizon and I'm getting behind. But I think that's kind of, to me, there's always some reaction that happens. And that's part of being a skilled beekeeper is when you look in a colony, you read a frame, like Ian says, you read the frames and you say, hey, these bees need to be fed, or these bees need this, or these bees need that. And that's part of the reactive phase, but it can be done quickly instead of sitting there and trying to figure out what to do. You just know what to do. But proactive to me, in a sense, also means not just equipment wise, but you have a plan in place for, okay, I'm going to take some mite counts. I'm going to have a strategy that how I'm going to treat them this year. I'm going to try this product or that product. I'm going to have a strategy for how I'm going to feed them this year. You have a strategy ahead of time for how you want to manage your bees throughout the year, instead of just kind of like, oh my gosh, my bees are failing. They're going to die if I don't do something. What can I do? What can I do? And that happens. And so that happens to me quite a bit. And I see these folks on here putting Bruce's bees 225. I wouldn't be opposed to that if I could manage that many. So I haven't figured out how to manage 150 and keep them all alive yet. So when I do that, maybe I'll try and bump up to 200 or 225. But anyway, I just thought that was it kind of goes along with the initial question of the intentional beekeeping, but I thought it was kind of good to discuss that and think about that a little bit as well.
Bruce, if I can manage 20, you can manage 225.
I think I can, but I haven't figured out how yet. So
I think bees are like children, right? In some cases. I mean, Ian said that you figure out very quickly what your threshold is because your bees start to decline, right? But bees are like children, right? In a scenario where you have one hive, you have 10 hives, you have 20 hives, and you can just manage the 10 as you manage the 20. You start to find techniques and ways to go through the process. You don't overanalyze your inspections. I think that's a lot of times what newer beekeepers with 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 hives, they're looking at every frame. They're looking, and they can. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying they shouldn't. Mm-hmm. But when you have 20 hives, when you have 50 or 150 hives, you can't. It's physically impossible. You know what you're looking for. You can quickly assess that, whether it's bee volume, whether it's a smell that you can smell, whether it's weight, whether it's eggs, or brood wherever and things like that. And you make those quick assessments and you move to the next one, because at that point, when you have that volume, let's say you have 100 hives. And if you're making those quick assessments and you don't do the full inspection like they teach you in Beekeeping 101, and you lose 10% because you missed a couple hives and they swarmed or they were weaker and they probably needed some assistance, you still have 90 other hives and you can split and make 125 quicker than if you have 5 hives and you lose all 5. So it's really
Well, and with certain numbers, and this is where I like the comfort level where I'm at now with 11. Okay. And if I get a couple extra colonies next year, that's fine. But there's a little bit of a buffer because you can afford to lose, even with somebody that has 11, you can afford to lose 2 or 3 because come springtime and you split, well, you're way back above even where you were. So you gain a comfort level with having that buffer. If you only have 2 colonies in your backyard and you lose 1, you're always taking a major step back, and God forbid if somebody has two and they lose both of them, that's where you're just hitting that pit, you're just constantly taking those hits. So there is a little bit of, I'd say, comfort with having a few extra colonies.
For sure.
There's a disclaimer there also. Brian will not expand.
Maybe not this year, but
Yeah.
My mentor always told me, whatever you want to come out of winter with, go in double. I mean, that's the way I look at it, and that's all. If I want to come out with 100 hives, then I need to have 200 because I'm expecting 50% losses. And if I lose 10% or 20%, well, shoot, I'm ahead of the game. So if you use that rule, and again, that's looking at them like livestock, not looking at them like pets. And that's I use that in one of my discussions in one of my prior videos about how a hobbyist that has 2 and 3 hives views a bee colony as a pet almost. Nothing wrong with that, right? And they will do everything in their power to help their bees along, whether it's treating, whether it's wrapping, whether it's sugarboarding, whether it's knitting little, what did you say, down jackets, Brian? Whatever it is, they will do to save every bee's life, because every bee matters in that scenario, right? But in the scenario where you've got 100 colonies or 150 colonies like Bruce, if he loses 10 colonies, he can make 10 colonies in the snap of a finger in spring, right? It's not as easy for someone who's got 5 colonies or 4 colonies.
Sure. And it's really about where you are in your journey and what your goals are. Like, I wanted to say here, thanks, Bruce, for the $10 super chat. I really appreciate that. That helps us with these prizes and just helps us with the channel and with these chats. So I really appreciate that. It means a lot. But yeah, exactly. And it really, this is another thing that I think we all have to be careful of is, I'm not sure if the word is judgment or what the word really is, but people just have different goals. They have different things they're trying to accomplish. And so, like in Brian's case, I've heard Brian say it before, that whenever he goes and hangs out with Greg, he's like, this reminds me why I don't want to do this, because he doesn't want to feel rushed and have just like a thing he has to do. Is that right, Brian? When you go through, you want to actually be able to spend more time with your bees, really look at the bees and just enjoy the whole moment. You don't want to have to rush through them and get through 100 colonies. You don't want to do that.
The last time I went down and worked in the yard with him, it's when he was tossing on the Apogard. And it was literally, we kind of had it set up where he would slap a shim down and, I would slap in the treatments, and it was just, we had a rhythm going. And after like the first set, I looked at him, and every single time I kind of work in that phrase, every time I just look at him, I'm like, you see, I don't want this.
And we give Brian a hard time, the Brian 20, hashtag Brian 20, and he needs to grow. He needs to grow. And honestly, I do that tongue in cheek, because I agree that a beekeeper needs to grow to the capacity in which they're comfortable. And if Brian and his journey is 11 hives, then it's 11 hives, and he will determine that, right? There's no shame in having 2 hives or 50 hives. It's really about what you want to do and what you want to get out of it, your goals, Bruce, to your point. It's really about that. And I think you're right. Sometimes I envy Brian, because I know that he can go through each hive, and know what's happening specifically. My tracking and my note taking and, has to be very, very quick. And a lot of it's by memory, just based on what I saw the hive before. And my signals that I use, I call them signals, have to be a lot different than what Brian's tracking is.
I can tell you right now, the 4 colonies that I have in the back, I have the 2 rows. I have the 7-frame Apame. That's my Pepto Pink Queen. The next colony over is my Uribe honeybees. It's my hybrid that Jose, he sent extra. The very next one is my Caucasian Uribe honeybee. The very next one over from that is a Caucasian that I got from Greg. So I know I can go through every single one, and I know the coloring of the queens. I know, and I like that. I enjoy that. I enjoy being able to just look at, go through an inspection, and when I spot one of the queens, because you don't see them all the time, I've gotten to the point where I used to be exactly like what you said, Jason, and I would check every single frame. you know, just because you love looking at them. But
Mhm.
now if you skim through and you know what to look for,
Mhm.
you know, what your nest looks like, what your stores are looking like, what the activity looks like, smell, different things like that, and you move on. So for me, almost like I won a prize that day when I spot, you know, even two or three of my queens. Cause I'm just like, oh man, look at that one. And, you know,
Mhm.
so, but yeah,
Yeah, and I envy that because there's a lot of good data in that too, Brian. I mean, with what you're
yeah,
doing, you have a very good controlled test yard. I mean, in
yeah,
a scenario where someone has 20 colonies or 10 colonies, even that's a great test yard to
mm,
do things, to understand different products, different solutions, different ways of different
mm,
queen genetics. I mean, there's really good things that you can learn from that. Now, not that someone who's got 150 hives can't do that. It's just on a different perspective, different scale, right? I mean, their goals are slightly
mm.
different in that scenario. So I know. Yeah.
I love this, what Stan just said.
Yeah.
Three kinds of people: those that make things happen, watch things happen, those who ask what happened.
Yes, 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 absolutely. That's so true.
Mhm.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Uh, what's next,
Man.
Bruce?
Well, why don't we give away? Speaking of Stan, I have a couple of giveaways here. Right here we have the
Chicken
what we call
plucker.
this, Brian, the chicken plucker, whatever. Greg has a long name for it, but it goes in a machine, it plucks chickens, and this you wonder if you haven't been on these live chats before we were giving these away. This is designed to use with your smoker. Instead of having to find the perfect stick out there, the perfect thing to plug your smoker to go from bee yard to bee yard, or at the end of the day, you can just stick this in the end of your smoker in the hole there, and it just works. It plugs the smoker up, so you don't have to change out your fuel every time. So hashtag plug, I like it. Also, but we're going to call it hashtag plug. But in addition to that, in the same package, you'll get one of these. What's that look like? We call it the crack pipe queen catcher.
Heck
Now it's made
yeah.
out of plastic, so I don't think it actually would be a crack. I really don't know what it actually really is, but Stan calls it that. Maybe that's what it is. But
Mm.
it's got a little hole right here. You reach down, you put it on the queen. She goes in there. You put it off to the side. Now, one thing that Stan mentioned is very important is you don't just leave a queen in here very long. This is for just moving her, doing something quick, because she can overheat in this very quickly. So if you want an easy way to catch a queen without risking pinching her in one of those little cage things, one of those clips, scoop the queen up, put the plug in it, move the queen, manipulate the hive, whatever you got to do real quickly, and then release the queen. Don't leave her in here for very long though. But these two things were products that were donated to me by Stan Gore. Getting confused here. Stan Gore from Texas Friendly Beekeepers, and he sent me a couple packages just for us to give away on these stream teams. So we're gonna give those away. So everybody, if you want it, give it a try. Hashtag plug. Let's see how many we can get on here, how fast, and we'll spin it real quick.
Yeah.
But
I gotta get me one of them. I do. I've been saying that.
Yeah. Same.
So I do. Even if I get like a large dowel and whittle off part of it so that I can plug my smoker, because
Mhm.
it
I've
works well.
found,
They work well. I found back in the spring, I found the perfect stick. Like I've been using it all summer long. It fits in there perfectly. It couldn't be more perfect. I'd be using one of these probably if I didn't have that thing, but it just works perfectly. I've been using it for months, and I haven't lost it yet, so I keep using it. When I can't find it, I may use one of these things. But they do fit in the smoker perfectly. I've tested them out, and they just fit right in the end of the smoker really well.
yeah,
Already up to 66. Let's see if we can get up to about let's get to 85 or 90, and we'll spin the wheel,
yeah.
or we'll spin the whatever you call it. I'm not sure if you call it spin the wheel, but just we'll select somebody here.
DC's Blessed Bees said, "Isn't the anniversary coming up? December 21st at 8 p.m."
That is going to be that's going to be a wild show. It's going to be on the same level of the night we gave away the extractor, in the night that Jason did his 10,000. It's going to be kind of something like that, where it's going to be just, let's try and get it all in and cram it in there. But those were a couple of live chats I've seen that were just off the chain. A lot of folks, a lot of stuff accomplished in a short period of time.
Yeah.
this was
Jason,
a very,
Jason, I still don't know how you did that, Jason, that night, man. You had so many.
I don't know
folks
how
on.
I did that, Bruce, that night. I honestly don't. It was such a blur. If I didn't have Brian behind the scenes and other people, and even Rob helping me when on site, I don't know how I did it. I was exhausted for like a week after that. It was crazy. Yeah, it takes a lot out of you.
Yeah, well, that was a special night for you, and that ran very smooth. I was just happy to be a part of it, and it did. That was an awesome stream. So
yeah, and I do, Bruce, have a chart that I stumbled upon that I'd like to share after we draw this plug real
Absolutely.
quick.
We'll do it.
That I think is helpful.
I think let's get up to about 85 and we'll spin it. We're at 78 right now. Let's see. Grayson asked if we're going to have some guests on that night. Yeah, Grayson, we're going to have some folks on there. Just a lot of people we've had over the past year, but we haven't got it all down. There's going to be so many. It's going to be so busy that we probably won't have everybody we've had on the show. We're going to have a few people on there, so it'll be a lot of fun. What are we up to? 78 still.
I wish that we could fit everybody that we have had, but it would
we'd have to do either 2 clips or we'd have to do a 4-hour segment, which we just can't do that. We're trying to keep things around 2 hours. We found that's kind of the sweet spot, and so sometimes we go a few minutes over. We try not to go quite as long on these things, but yeah, it's really hard to manage those things because you just want to visit with everybody, but you just can't. So we're going to hopefully it'll be a really fun night. Gonna be a lot of giveaways, a lot of things. Hopefully we'll have a lot of folks on there, but it's gonna be just a really fun event, and it'll be pretty neat. Well, how many do we have? Is it still 79?
And yeah. There's 80.
Let's go. Let's roll it.
Let's spin it. So
Rodney Middleton. There we go. Rodney's been a very frequent contributor to the channel as far as like on these live chats, and he comments on a lot of my videos, and I really appreciate Rodney, and very well deserved. Rodney, shoot me at my email at brucesbees.com. Shoot me your contact information, your address, and we'll get that out to you in the next couple of days. Jason, you had something you wanted to share with us?
I do. I think this is appropriate. This is a chart I fell upon that I think identifies every one of us.
Yes.
And that's something I thought was pretty funny. You got crazy people, you have farmers, and we're right here in the middle.
And sometimes that circle's a little smaller, and sometimes it's a little bigger. Sometimes you're more of a crazy person than a farmer. Sometimes you're more of a farmer than a crazy person. But if you're a beekeeper, you're somewhere. You're in that little subset somewhere. You're in there. I love that.
Yep. I just text Rodney, so
okay. Yeah, just have him just shoot me his contact, or he can either way.
Yeah.
We've already talked about a lot of what I wanted to bring up. Jason, I wanted to and I know a lot of people are already into winter now, so it's probably a little too late for this, but for some folks that may not be quite there yet, or maybe for future reference, in the Stream Team Nugget I did, for those who weren't on the chat early this evening, who have jumped on since, a couple things. I've started doing some, I call them Stream Team Nuggets, just gone back to the older Stream Team videos that were on my channel and tried to pull out some clips and segments that I thought you would want to see. And the very first evening that we had a guest on, and we actually kind of quote unquote started calling ourselves a stream team. We had tossed the name around a little bit before, but the first night we decided to kind of call ourselves that was the night we had Jason on, just shortly after we attended Hive Life last winter. And I went back and watched that thing. I'm like, I couldn't remember really what we had talked about, but when I went back through it, there were just some really good nuggets of information. So most recent Stream Team Nugget actually is one with Jason here on there from almost a year ago. And I'm trying to pull some of these out because, as I mentioned earlier, to go back and watch an old video that's 2.5, 3 hours long, or even 2 hours long, or even an hour long, sometimes it's hard to do. But we've had some really good clips. We've had some tremendous guests on here that have done a great job, and we've had just some moments that were just needed to be shared, and I think can be valuable evergreen content, as they call it. That'll just be good moving forward. And it's just hard to go through 2 hours of content, but if I can pull out a 10 to 15, even maybe sometimes a 20-minute clip that really can help some folks out, that's what I'm trying to do. And so if you go on my channel under Stream Team Nugget playlist, you can find these, and I'm going to be dropping more of these as we move along until I kind of get caught up. But back to the topic tonight, Jason. You talked about overwintering your bees. You talked about different hive body sizes, and folks can kind of go back and watch that nugget if they want to. But one thing you spent a little bit of time on in that nugget that I shared today was bee space. Could you kind of expand on that a little bit, not just for wintertime, but just kind of talk a little bit about your principles and concepts with the bee coverage and bee space in the colonies?
No, it's yeah, you're right, and I think that's one thing that I've learned over the years that has worked well for me. And I did a video about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, on hive body management. And I prefaced it that there isn't really no one solution, but kind of tried to put the frame of mind of looking at the cluster of bees and the volume of bees and the space they're in, right? And I've realized that in over the years of beekeeping, bees like to be able to control and manage the space they're in. And if we're going to keep them from swarming, we give them more space. We don't give them too much space. We give them space that's commensurate to the cluster size or the amount of volume of bees. A good example would be if you have, a package of bees that you start a colony out with. You don't dump them in a 20 frame box. I mean, you got 3 pounds of bees. This is your cluster, right? In a 20 frame box, they're going to get lost in there. They're not going to know where they're going to they're going to focus, and they're going to either lose heat very quickly, and they need that 93-degree temperature around the brood's nest, or they're not going to know what they need to do, and the resources are going to be spread thin. They're not going to be able to patrol for pests. So that's why I try to keep and manage to bee volume and the bee space that they're in. The principle that I teach my classes is really, 80-50 is what I use that term a lot, 80-50. And when you open up a colony of bees and you're looking at a box of bees, if they're managing and they're working 80% of the frames or 8 out of 10 frames, right? Then you say, okay, we might need to expand this colony space for commensurate to the volume of bees. If you pull those frames out that you're looking at and all of those 8 frames have 50% or more bee coverage, then in my mind, that's check. Got to give them more space. However, what time of year are you in? Are you in the fall when you're trying to go into winter, or are you in the spring or the winter coming into spring? Or are you going into summer? All those variables play into what you're going to do when you see the 80-50 rule, right? And that's kind of what I follow. And it relates to the structure of the boxes that I'm using, how many supers I'm putting on, how many brood boxes. I've even gone as far as finding, and I think in that nugget you mentioned this, Bruce, or captured it, where I've sort of kind of stumbled upon, and this is not new, believe me, I know a lot of beekeepers on this stream, I've seen their pictures of their yards, or we've talked about it, which is, we call it the 5/5 nuke. And I've found a lot of success with 5/5. If I've got a nuke that's 5 frames and I want that to expand, rather than putting it into a 10 frame box, putting it to 5/5. And that 5/5 mirrors, in my mind, the cavity of a tree, right? So they like that kind of thin. I guess maybe it's just the management of the moisture, management of the heat, and it just works really well for your backyard hobbyist sideline beekeeper. It doesn't work well necessarily for a commercial outfit, obvious reasons, equipment consistency and things like that. But for someone that's managing a yard and they're trying to take a nuke and they're growing it, give them that 5/5. If they haven't made a 10 frame box or a 10 in a super or two deeps, whatever you're at with that 80-50, give them another nuke space to go into, and you'll be surprised going into winter, they'll probably have a lot better success. That's just what I found. So I don't know if that covers what you wanted to talk about, but that's kind of
no, that's perfect. And I think, once again, the art of beekeeping, I think this would qualify when it comes to reading those frames. That is a very good rule. The 80-50% 80-50 principle there. Yeah. And I agree with you when it comes to the nukes stacked up, 2 nukes, 3 nukes. I've had them up to 4, and I've maybe even 5 nukes before, as long as they don't blow over. But they just thrive in those things, man. Year round, they thrive. Do. And it is so easy to split those things too, especially, early spring when they start brooding up, man. If, they will, you can just basically pull the top one off and make a split like that. You got 2 immediate nukes, and then you can almost immediately, when you do that in the spring, put a second box on each of those, and they'll blow up into that very quickly. And then you can split them again that way. And then if you want to let them expand out into 10 frame or whatever you want to do, but they love those. And I know there are some people that run nothing but nukes. The danger of that though is during a good flow, they do explode really quickly, and you can get honey bound quickly because they're not really quite big enough unless you're harvesting honey off and taking them off. Right. And so, but it is a great configuration. I really like it. And I've had some this year. I don't have as many. Last year I wintered a bunch of nukes. This year I didn't do as many late splits or keep as many nukes year round, but I have quite a few. Some of the ones we put Greg's Queens in and everything. And I do have more nukes than I thought I did. So I don't have a lot of them stacked up though. Some of those were kind of late splits that are just in a single nuke now, but yeah, they do well down here too. What blows me away about the nukes though is how well they do up there where it's cold. Mm-hmm. I would think that with the more narrow space, smaller space, to me, it's kind of crazy, but it works. Maybe it's because if they're spread out so far, the heat is going up instead of out. It's, they've got more room for that heat to kind of move around in that colony. I don't know, but for some reason they love 5 framers.
I've seen, is that a promotion, Brian?
No, somebody just said on here, did Brian just drink some whiskey? So I'm just showing everybody, no, I'm not here. I'm not here getting
brought to you by Pure Leaf TV.
Pure Leaf tea. And what I was drinking earlier was not a beer, it's Reed's ginger ale. So I'm not sitting here getting loaded on our stream.
Yeah. But anyway, that's the great stuff. That's kind of is what I wanted to talk about. And I wanted to bring that up again because that is a lot of people. Once again, it's the art of beekeeping. That's something they probably won't teach you in the books. They don't talk about that kind of thing. They talk about, but you have to be, the books have to be basic. You can't just talk about every way of doing things. Mm-hmm. And so in defense of people who write books and things like that, they've got to do what they think is most important for them and what works for them. And usually the concepts and principles are good in the books. It's just that it becomes, once you begin to work with the bees and learn all the different ways to do things, it really is, there's so many ways to do it. And the bees, the thing I've found, and this is probably one of the great truths in beekeeping, is that bees are very adaptable. I mean, they'll adapt to a lot of different things. And also on the opposite side of the coin, sometimes the strongest colonies, the bees you think are going to be the strongest, are the ones that will crash on you. And so they're not 100% predictable. Mm-hmm. But if you kind of learn the bees, if you become quote unquote proactive, as you become intentional and skilled in what you're doing, you can keep more of them alive than you kill. And that's like kind of the goal, is to try and keep your bees alive. And I think a principle that a lot of people, there are all kinds of people out there who are, hobbyists in the world that are trying to, they're kind of, quote unquote experts in the field that may have had a couple of colonies for a couple of years and kept them alive for a couple of years. So they're trying, kind of trying to share what they're doing, which is fine, but they become sometimes quite opinionated in what they're doing, and they're trying to tell other people what to do. And that's okay. But what I believe my principles are, and they've kind of shifted to this, and I've always had this opinion somewhat, but I've kind of shifted to, I'll look at who has to feed their families with their bees. If you got to provide a living, if you've got to put the food on the table with your bees, then it's in your best interest to keep the bees alive. Mm-hmm. And so I want to look to those people and see what they're doing. And this kind of moves right into another topic a little bit, in that one of the big rifts, I think, in the beekeeping world over the years has been that the commercial guys, the guys that are successful, have been hesitant to share what they're doing with the new beekeepers or the hobbyists, because they don't want to give away their secrets. But it's probably been 2 or 2.5, whenever it was that I first talked to Cayman on the phone, that is his whole, and if he was on here, he could clarify this, but from our conversation, my understanding is that is Cayman Reynolds' whole philosophy with the Hive Life movement, with what he's trying to do with his channel. Everything he's trying to do is to bring that knowledge of the commercial successful beekeepers like the Bob Bennies, the Insteppers, and others to the beginner beekeeper, and in an attempt to make that curve faster, in an attempt to make it not drag out over 5 or 6 or 7 years, or have people quit, in an attempt to help them be able to reach that plane of sustainability or success, productivity quicker, without so much discouragement and despair and disillusionment. And so that's what he's really doing. That's really what we're trying to do. I think that's really what the whole Hive Life movement is about, is sharing, the people who are skilled and experts, sharing what they're doing with those who aren't.
I honestly, Bruce, don't think that the commercial outfitters are doing anything magical. I honestly
They're
don't.
not. They're not.
I think that people think that they are. I think honestly, it comes down to one thing in my mind, and it's bee volume. And I don't mean necessarily all just bee volume in a hive, but bee volume in an apiary, right? When you look at losses, whether it's 0, whether it's 20, whether it's 50 in a single hive or in multiple hives in an apiary, right? It's about having redundancy, right? And I
Sure.
think we as beekeepers, hobbyists, we do coddle our bees. We do take care of that single hive, that single bee, right? And we coddle them to the point to where we say, okay, if this bee dies, the colony is going to die, because that's what we're all taught. We're taught that every bee is important in that hive because it has a job. And if that bee can't do its job, right, then the colony is going to collapse. But if we look at it from a perspective of how commercial beekeepers have looked at it, as an apiary, as thousands of hives, as billions of bees, right, that when one bee can't do the job, another bee will do the job. It will go back and backfill what's needed to be done to make the colony move forward, right? So I guess that's the perspective I take, is that whether you have 1 or 2 colonies or whether you have 50 colonies, it's about bee volume. It's about redundancy and knowing that. That's where I think that the key to beekeeping success falls in that redundancy and that bee volume.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's nothing. This don't get. Hope I don't get any hate mail from this, but there is not a magical. There's nothing magical about beekeeping as far as what it takes to be successful. There are certain principles that apply, certain strategies that apply. You have to learn how to manage the bees, how to manage the space, just like you said. But the thing about it is so many. I guess what I'm trying to say is so many people are trying to do so much, so many things that just simply aren't necessary to keep their bees alive. And if you can learn the tricks of the trade, so to speak, the things that really matter the most, instead of focusing on the outlying things, the different ways of wrapping hives, the different ways of treating or managing your bees, the different types of colonies, beehives that you have with the fancy insulated hives or the wood hives or the nukes, or instead of worrying about all the fancy equipment, the flow hive, things like that. Focus on the bee principles that matter. Like you said, the bee space, when to grow, when to add another box, whether it's an Apame box or whether it's a wooden box or whether it's a secondhand box that you buy from a commercial beekeeper that want to just learn how to manage the bees first. And then it's all that equipment is fine. But if you lose, what am I trying to say here? If you get a colony of bees and you put them in a regular standard wooden 10 frame box, and you don't treat them properly, they're going to die. If you take that same colony of bees and you put them in a fancy Apame colony or any type of fancy insulated colony, and you treat them the same way you did in the wooden box, you don't treat them properly, you don't take care of them and manage the bee space like you should, you don't manage the pest, or maybe their genetics are just bad, those same bees are going to die in the Apame box. Does that make sense?
It does,
so
but I don't want to discount the innovation of the
absolutely.
trinkets, we'll call it the trinkets, or the innovation of trying to help bees in a volume apiary where you have 3 and 4 hives. I guess that's kind of my thought process. You're spot on. You have to know the basics, and you have to treat, regardless of the trinkets that you bolt on, if you don't do the principles right, the basics, and manage the hive as it relates to those things that you just talked about, that hive's going to die no matter what trinket you put on it.
Yeah.
Right. Just the nature of beekeeping. However, I don't want to say that an Apame hive versus a standard wood hive wouldn't have a benefit. It would, right?
You're right. You're right.
A beetle guard on the front of the hive, or putting peppermints in it, or doing all these other things that everybody likes to kind of put in play, and discounting it, saying you don't need all that. I think you do. I think you need what you think you need to help the bees along, but we should never coddle our bees to the point to where we basically outfit them for their own failure, right? Because we're doing too much. We should do the principles and then test into things that work for you in your region, and add those things if you need them. Don't depend on them like they're going to keep your bees alive.
I have to say this because Greg is not here.
Yeah.
One word: anthropomorphize.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, Brian, define that for us.
What is the definition, now that you can pronounce it?
The exact definition, I don't know. It's cold outside. Oh my gosh, let me go put a jacket on my bees because they're cold. Oh my gosh, they're out there. They're cold. They're freezing. I'm cold outside, so they're cold outside. They can't make it outside. It's
Yeah.
Northeast Ohio. Why,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, I need to go and buy a sewing machine so that I can wrap my colonies.
It's basically when you put human characteristics on a non-human thing, like you
Yeah.
put human characteristics on a bee, and the bees are not human. They do things differently. They react differently. But to your point, Jason, I did not mean at all to
No,
discount, because my whole backyard, my entire backyard
fantastic
apiary,
discussion, Bruce. I didn't mean to.
my entire apiary in the backyard is Apis hives. I love them. They're
Mhm.
really good. I do think they have advantages, but like we've all kind of discussed, is you've got to learn the bee principles. For example, Brian, you had a flow hive. We're going to bring up the flow hive word here. There is a
Yeah.
beekeeping forum on YouTube, not YouTube. There's a beekeeping forum on Facebook where if you mention the word flow hive, they kick you off.
Mhm.
But I personally have a friend that I kind of helped mentor a little bit. They bought a couple of nukes from me, and they have a flow hive. They manage the colony. They do their best to take care of the colony. They feed them when they need to. They try to treat for mites. They're still kind of learning, but they love that thing, and it's produced all kinds of honey for them, and it's been successful. And so you can't just discount a gadget or a type of hive. And I really do believe that the Apis do have an advantage. I'm not saying that they don't, but it
Yeah, I
all
would
just
use
goes
Apis
down.
as an example of just another way to keep bees as an enhancement or innovation. The flow
Mhm.
hive actually is a better example of it, Bruce, because the flow hive, in their initial rollout and marketing of the flow hive, the notion was presented that you don't need to bother your bees. You don't need to get in your bees. You can just tap honey out of it. Now, is the innovation of the flow hive super cool? Oh, yes, it works. I have one. That was one of my first beehives. Do I still use it? Probably not. It just doesn't work within my equipment structure. It doesn't work within my apiary. But is it a good thing? Sure, it's a great invention. But the notion, to your point you just made, which is if you don't know the principles of what's going on in that beehive below it and how to manage those bees, then it doesn't matter what you set on top of the beehive. It's not going to work no matter what because you didn't do what was supposed to be done within the hive below it, right?
Mhm.
And that's the point I think that rubbed a lot of beekeepers the wrong way about
Absolutely. Absolutely.
when I was sitting with Fred,
Mhm.
and Fred was in on their Indiegogo campaign and all that kind of stuff, and we just got talking about the flow hive just because the conversation what
Galloway Light's comment is spot on. Flow hive is not beekeeping; it's a pantry. It's still beekeeping, but it's you're
Yeah.
right. But that's exactly it, Galloway. I mean, that's spot on. It's another technique or tool that someone's
Yeah.
used to harvest honey. Nothing wrong with it.
Yep.
It's not beekeeping in that sense.
The flow hive though, when Fred and I were talking and how did I get started, and I told him, I said my mom wanted a flow hive, and he said, so basically because I purchased a flow hive from my mom and I got a hive, I was sitting down with Fred Dunn years later,
Yeah.
Sure.
So granted, there were those that got into the hobby of beekeeping. They started out this beekeeping journey because of a flow hive, and they totally flopped, and they didn't understand the nitty-gritty details of beekeeping. But then there are those others. Just think of how many other beekeepers are out there that saw that flow hive. It's a cool gadget, and
Mhm.
that was the start of their entire beekeeping journey.
Yeah. Man, this has been so much fun tonight. I look up on the screen and we've got 148 people or so, almost 150 people still. And
Are we going to spin the wheel one more time?
yeah, I want to pull this up again and show you what I'm going to do. I've debated about this and I'm not really sure. It'll be kind of an experiment for me. So whoever gets this is going to be a guinea pig.
Oh boy.
But I'm going to try and mail one of these to somebody. And I might get some ideas after the fact. Jason, from you, I think you've mailed some of these in the past. I'm going to do a 1 pound muth, whatever you want to call it. One of our beautiful bottles here. And I have an order I got to get ready. So it may be a few days before we get that ready, but I had someone order some today. So we'll do an extra one up and mail it to someone. But also know if you don't win this, you can go to brucesbees.com and we're going to have them available there. My fear with mailing these things in the past has been with the wax seal and the cork, keeping them sealed up so they don't leak. I have had some other folks give me some ideas. We've mailed them before with good success, but it just makes me nervous going through the mail. And I know, Jason, you've mailed some fragile stuff. Brian, you might have too in the past. So maybe I can get some ideas from you guys. I think I know how to do it. We're going to do it, but we're going to get them to you. And if you order them, we'll make sure we get them to you. And if there's any issues, of course, we'll replace them. But I think we've mailed, like I say, it's not like we've never mailed these. We've mailed probably well over 100 of them in the past. I think we've mailed quite a few of them and they've made it okay. But anyway, so Muth bottles, let's make the goal 100 on these. And I'm going to mail a 1 pound one.
I've been silenced. I put Muth like a million times in a row.
What'd you put?
Banned.
Nightbot.
Nightbot shut me down.
What did it do? I didn't see that.
I got all excited. I want one of Bruce's Bees Muth bottles.
Well, good. All right.
That is awesome.
Hashtag Muth, and we'll get one to you. Yeah, Garrison says wrap in double bubble insulation. That's what we're going to do, Garrison. We'll wrap them in some bubble wrap. We're going to wrap them up like they'll be wrapped up good. So
yeah, if you're worried about it tremendously, put it in a Ziploc bag in bubble wrap.
We will,
and that right there will help move it through.
Yeah, I had a friend that ordered quite a few of them back, and I sent him I think the large ones. I don't know if we sent some large ones, some mediums, and some plastic squeeze bottles in 3 or 4 different boxes, and they went to Utah. And of course, we had this side up mark on there. We wrapped them up like crazy. I think he ordered 10 of each. And when they got there, one of the boxes he said on his front porch was upside down. And he said 2 of the bottles were leaking a little bit. He wiped off the leak of the honey and they were fine. So it's not like the bottles were broken or there were any issues. It just had a couple drops they were leaking. But what do you do when you put this side up thing and you put fragile and you wrap them up like crazy? You just do the best you can. So
I had a family in the military overseas that wanted me to send a bottle of honey over, so I sent 2 small 8-ounce bottles of my honey, bubble wrapped it, did all the things to kind of make sure it would get through, and sent it off. And he received it. I said, "Did you receive the honey?" He goes, "No, they sent me the empty box that you sent with a notice in it saying that the honey was not able to make it. It was damaged or something like that." And I'm like, "Yeah, right. They took honey out of the box and sent you the damage slip."
Oh my gosh. We were at how many? 88? Is that right?
88. Yep.
All right. Well, let's go. Yeah, we might as well. Close enough.
Come on, Castle Hives. Castle Hives.
Oh, I saw Bohemia Bees in there.
Leroy
Schrock.
All right, Leroy, send me an email with your contact information or your shipping information, and we will get that out to you here. It's going to be a few days. We got to get it made for you, but we'll get it out to you soon. But send me an email, bruce@brucesbees.com. I think it's also in my about section on my channel. So once again,
I got that troll, and Rob did too.
Appreciate it. So we got this right here again, guys. Leroy won him one of these 1 pound squeeze bottles right here. So anyway, let me start that screen and I wanted to kind of wrap it up. We're getting towards the end here. I've got one last quote to discuss here, and I think it really, let me see if I can get this. I'm still trying to use this computer minimized here. All right, man, the trolls are out in full force tonight.
Unreal.
I don't know, and I have the Nightbot thing on. I might need to figure out some more things to put in there to knock those suckers. All right, library. Let me go here. Let me find what I'm looking for. There's one more quote I wanted to talk about that I find to be very somewhat inspirational, not just in beekeeping, but in life. And we'll kind of end on this. We did bring it up last time in our last chat with Greg. And let me share it here. And once again, this is a famous quote. I'm sure most of you have probably heard it, but it applies in beekeeping as much as anything out there. That which we persist in doing becomes easier to do, not that the nature of the thing has changed, but that our power to do so. Let me start over. That which we persist in doing becomes easier to do, not that with the nature of the thing has changed, but that our power to do so has increased. and how true that is. You know, we've talked about these different curves. We've talked about the scales. We've talked about proactive, reactive, but really it just boils down to the fact that we become more skilled in what we're doing, right? As we go along. And so it's important to realize that. And any final thoughts on that, guys? Jason, what do you think?
Yes, 100%. It's like having children, right? You have that first child and you're prepared for every little thing, right? You put, little things in the light sockets, you put padding on the edge of this. You have the second child and you can, you get some wipes and you're good, right? I mean, it's just literally that over time you get better. Having that child and taking care of that child did not get easier. It's still just as hard as the first child, but your experience level is higher and your patience is probably a little bit more. It's the same with bees. And if we look at bees in the same way and keeping colonies, it kind of goes back to my comments around volume, right? So don't be necessarily concerned about having 5 and 10 hives or 20, right? Because at the end of the day, if you want 2, then have 2. If you want 100, have 100. But realize that over time, you're going to have to work a little bit harder to take care of those 1 or 2 hives should something happen versus if you have 20 hives and you have something happen. Because what do they say? Life is 10% what happens and 90% how you react to it. Kind of applicable there too as well.
I agree. Brian, thoughts?
I can't add anything.
All right, guys.
Can't add anything.
All right. Well, I think we'll just, let me see. Let's go and close that out. Brian, do we want to do that one more giveaway? What do you think from Rob? Or we're just waiting the next time?
It's up to you.
Well,
Rob,
we'll go ahead.
Here.
Rob's still here. Rob, are you still here? There's one more thing I overlooked that we may do here. We'll see. What was the giveaway? Why don't we just do it and we can tell him? What do you remember what it was, Brian, or is it
10% off coupon?
Did he give you a code for that or anything?
No.
He said he would do a 10% off coupon for Larabis.
Okay. All right. Hashtag Larabis. We're going to go. Let's get to 50 and we'll spin it. Hashtag Larabis. Remember, it's LORO, 2 B's, EES. If you would like a 10% off discount on that. I'm not sure. We might have kind of. There's one. We'll go for just a couple minutes here and whatever we got, we'll spin it.
Yeah.
10% discount off of Rob's channel.
Yeah, I see a couple only had 1 B, so yeah, just make sure that it's exactly like it is.
Make sure it has 2 B's. It has to be just like it is, or the software won't pick it up.
Yeah. And just so while we're collecting entries for this, December 21st at 8 p.m. Eastern, one of the prizes will be one of the instant vapes. So there's going to be an Apame nuke set up. There's going to be I don't know what's in the item that, Bohemia Bees there has for it. There'll be some Nature's Image Farm stuff. There's going to be some Hive Alive stuff. It's going to be a little bit of stuff. So, yeah,
it's going to be, I think we're working at well over $1,000 worth of stuff, aren't we, Brian? If I'm not mistaken.
We're way past that.
So it's going to be fun. And, it'll be a fun evening. Going to have a lot of incredible guests on, some folks that have been on over the past year, and it's just going to be a great evening. So we look forward to it. That'll be exactly 1 year, because I remember last year was on a Tuesday evening, and so it will be the 1 year exact anniversary of the first live stream. We're at 50. Why don't we spin this thing and go ahead and spin it.
51. All right, let's see. M&J Habitat. Awesome.
Congrats.
So what do they need to do? What do they need to do do we know what they need to do to get that discount?
Rob, what do you want? What do you want that person to do?
Probably just have them reach out to Rob, and Rob will give them the discount code that they use to spend on it. That probably is the easiest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, just shoot me the email, guys, and I'll shoot that to Rob. Bruce at brucesbees.com once again. Shoot me that email to confirm that you want that code, and then we'll, I'll kind of connect you up with Rob or have Rob contact you. Does that sound good, Rob? I'll have them I'll have Rob contact you once you send me that email or whatever.
Yeah.
All right, M&J, sounds great. Once again, to close out, good times. It's been a lot of fun. Go to my channel at Bruce's Bees and look at the Stream Team nuggets for these from the past. I can't believe how much good information as I'm going back and watching these things. I've only watched 2 or 3 of them. I've got nuggets. I did the one from Gus Mitchell, and I just pulled out one of the things I found in there, and there's some other stuff in there I want to do, but it just takes time to get everything put together. But man, those are so cool. I just can't. Yeah. I don't remember. Like tonight, I know we've got some nuggets in here. It's going to be some good stuff moving forward, but I just don't remember afterwards. A year later, I can't remember everything we talked about, but going back through them, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is good. Oh my gosh, this is good. That needs to be a nugget. So it's just blowing me away at the great stuff we've done that at the moment, as I watch them, I remember, but I can't remember now everything that was in those videos. And so hopefully you'll go back and watch those and share them with folks. And there's some really valuable information. You don't have to plan on watching 2 hours at a time. You can just watch 1 or 2 and just take a few minutes driving down the road or whatever. You don't have to watch them driving down the road. You can listen, but it's almost like a podcast. You can just listen in and get some good information out of that. So I want to, before we close though, guys, once again, Jason, we really appreciate you being here. All those who came on this chat tonight and are in the chat comments, and all those who didn't, all those who are just on the watching, even if you didn't comment, I really appreciate you. I appreciate the super stickers, super chats that were donated. It helps the channel, helps us be able to give away these prizes. And I appreciate you, Jason, you, Brian, Greg. I know you're not here tonight, but we appreciate all this happened with this. And it's been a lot of fun, but I want to read this quote one more time. And this does not just apply once again to beekeeping, it applies in life. That which we persist in doing becomes easier to do, not that the nature of the thing has changed, but that our power to do so has increased. Y'all take care. There he is. All right, Brian, let's close it out, man. Y'all take care. Be safe, and we'll catch you on the next one.